Hello everybody, I'm Richard Gon of Work to Live podcast version. So this time, what I'd like to talk about is looking like the same with different humanities. I have just stumbled. So let me tell you again. Let me tell you the topic again. So topic or the title of this episode is looking like the same with different humanities. So I said really obscure title because I'm going to use some examples, and those examples are maybe if you do not much about if you do not know much about the other cultures, European cultures or American cultures, the examples might be, those examples I'm going to use might be confusing for you. And so, to start, before actually starting the topic, let me tell you the conclusion of this episode. So, what people think about what people think about are different each other when it comes to the matter of humanities and characteristics. People are different each other. So in this episode, mainly I'm thinking of using I'm people who are indigenous, who are minority people in this country. So almost say the indigenous people, but actually I'm people live in the northern part or the northern area of this country. So if you if you if you use Google with the keyword I know, so you can find out which country I live in. So but actually, I don't need to hide my country, or I don't need to hide the country I live in, because there are many people in this country, which is why of course I do not want to be identified. But actually, I don't like to be identified. But actually, it's fine to tell you that I live in Japan, because so if you can find if you find out which country I live in, I think it's impossible for you to identify me. Anyway, so I'm people, and why I decided to use other people as an example of this episode is because most listeners of this podcast are Caucasian people or white people, and so what? Maybe next question is so what? So yeah, maybe most of you might be white people, or if you are American, you might be for example Hispanic people. You might be a Hispanic person or a black person or Asian person. In the case of America, or in the case of the United States, in the case of the United States, so there are many colored people in that country. So which is why you might be a colored person like I am. So if you if there is a miracle, or if there is a fortune for you, and if there is a fortune for you, or you might be unlucky if you could identify me. So such an event might be a disaster for you anyway. So maybe maybe you don't. I don't think you want to meet me. So but I look like an East Asian. I look like an East Asian. So if you imagine some Japanese person, so I may I may look like him or her. Anyway, so I people. So coming back to coming back to the explanation of I people. So why I use I people as an example is because so and I think most listeners of my podcast are maybe white people. So there are some there are some people living in West European countries or West European developed advanced countries, which is why so the majority of European countries, or the majority of European countries is white people, which is why maybe so which is why I speculated that the most listeners of West European people are white people. Anyway, so I'm sorry for my dragging you to this part, but actually, so in short, what cutting to the chase, other people really look like, or other people really look close to white people. So which is why I decided to use Ainu people as an example. And I shouldn't say, of course, in this part, but actually let me use. So of course, Ainu people are segregated by the majority of Japanese people, or the majority Japanese people, because because that is that is it, it's like a destiny of minority people. Like minority people tend to be segregated, or minority people are on disadvantageous positions, thinking about a huge country, for example. So anyway, maybe in any community, minority people are segregated, because it's like a bullying, or some what the causes of bannings, like minority people or different people are segregated, or attacked by the majority, or the majority people. The majority people attack the minority people, which is how societies work. But of course, what I said is a nasty stuff. But actually, human societies works in such a manner, which is one of the bad points, or one of the disadvantage. Which I think is one of the disadvantages of human societies, because nowadays, to make a sustainable to make a sustainable society, or to accomplish a sustainable developing goal, stuff like that. SDG is really popular in recently. But so Iron people are segregated, but they look like white people, and for example, Iron people have hairy bodies, and they have stronger or larger muscles than the majority Japanese people, and so majority Japanese people call themselves Yamato people. So I'm so in such a manner, I think I'm a Yamato person. So, but anyway, so the majority Japanese people have segregated Ainu people, but the Ainu people look like not Asian, but Caucasian people. Of course, they have dark hairs, or some people have hairs or darker hairs, which is why, so in such a sense, so, or in such a way, I think you are going to find Ainu people, Asian people, because so I think this is a typical image, or typical picture that most white people have blonde hairs, with clear blue eyes, with white skin. Such people are the typical image, or such people are typical pictures of white people or Caucasian people. But so if you happen to take a look at the pictures of Ainu people, or if you have looked at the pictures of Ainu people, some of you may find ancient Ainu people look, looking like was really similar to Caucasian people or white people in terms of their appearances. But of course, I don't have to tell you this, but the other people and the Western white people, or other people and European people have clearly distinct, or different customs, characteristics, and traditions. In which sense, of course, so Ainu people and Caucasian people are totally different each other. I can surely say this, and but actually, there's a truth that maybe in ancient time, because some Ainu people living not Habarhusk, but Saharin Island. So which is why Ainu people live in Japan, or North Japan, not only Japan. Some Ainu people live Ainu people mainly live in Hokkaido or the northern part of Japan, and some Ainu group some groups of Ainu people live in Russian territory, which is why some Ainu people look like Caucasian people. But anyway, they are Caucasian. So Europe, for example, European Caucasian people and American Caucasian people or American white people are totally different from Ainu people of course, in terms of cultures, customs, and traditions, as I have told you meets before. But they look similar. But in this episode, what I'd like you to know is that people are different each other, and like you and I are different, and you and your next door is that it's different, and you and your best friend are different people, which is why so or human societies exist or human societies go in that manner. So different people have to accept our differences each other, which is how people can create some settlements, and which is by using which we can live on, and so so on the foundation called the settlements, or on the foundation on which and on the foundation to start with, we have to accept our differences, and we have to create some settlements, and we have to create some rules based on such settlements, or as based on such settlements as the foundation of our human societies, and which thinking about which, so in this present time, the war between Russia and Ukraine has lasted or has been prolonged, but actually, so I think it's necessary, or in this present time, or particular to this present time, I think it's necessary, or I think we need to be conscious that we need to be conscious about that, the fact that we need to be sure we need to be sure, or we have to remember that we have to accept each other, or we have to admit our differences each other. So of course so there is that war which is taking place between Russia and Ukraine is a war happening in or occurring in Europe, but actually so, and maybe some European people and American people focus on the differences between Russian people and the other white people. But actually, so if you are listening to my podcast, I think you can understand that I'm really different from you, and because of course my speaking manner is clearly different from that or those of native speakers of English language, and I think you can find out that I'm really my pronunciation is really different from that those of native speakers of English language. But actually, so what I want you to know is that if you for example, if you this is an extreme example, but if you really hate Russian people, but actually so Russian people can be closer to you than 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 the distance between you and I, because to start with, I'm an East Asian, and the war happening in Ukraine and Russia is a war happening in the societies of white people, but I'm Asian, so so if you focus on the differences between Russia and the other countries so much, so please think about me, or please think about the speaker of this podcast, or the speaker of this episode, because so if you think about the difference between you and I, so I think you can understand that so there are more different people than Russian people, which is how I think you can find out that we I think we I think you and I can reach the, or I think you and I can realize the fact that we need to accept our differences each other, so that peaceful world is created, which is what I want you to know this time, or which is what I'd like you to know this time. So that's it. And so coming back to the original title, looking like the same with different humanities, and the conclusion is what people think about are different each other, and when it comes to the matter of humanities and characteristics, people are different each other, and I use the example of any people. So, but actually, so anyway, we have to. So we are given birth to this planet. Or we are given birth to the earth, which is why we have to accept our differences each other, and we have to create some settlements globally, which is a fact we have to face. We have to face. So that's it. Thank you very much for your listening. See you.